Well, we all know that we have the Hall of Famer Peyton Manning here, and we're going to hear from him. But what you may not know is we have another Hall of Famer here, the man actually responsible for drafting him #1 overall in 1998 with the Indianapolis Colts, Hall of Fame executive, Mr. Bill Polian.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be here. Nice to see so many old friends. It hardly seems like a quarter of a century ago that I sent a card in on behalf of the Indianapolis Colts, making Peyton Manning the #1 choice in the 1998 draft. The ensuing years have seen Peyton win multiple MVP awards, set numerous NFL records, lead his team to 4 Super Bowls and win 2 Lombardi trophies, and become a first ballot by acclamation Hall of Famer. But you know all that. I'd like to share with you, as the Reverend did, a little of what I know of my teammate. In Indianapolis, he's an icon. His dedication, integrity, and civic engagement inspired generations of new fans. Lucas Oil Stadium is there because of Peyton Manning. There's a statue of him outside the stadium that's only fitting because it's the house that Peyton built. The Colts wouldn't be there, and that stadium wouldn't be there without him. Peyton Manning Children's Hospital is a lasting memento of his dedication to the city, and obviously it's there and will be there long after his playing days. And that was one of the first things he did charitably when he came with us. This is an organization which is dedicated to high school and youth athletics. High school football in Indiana was in a very bad state when Peyton came with us. Overnight, largely because of his generosity, high school football rebounded tremendously. Peyton formed the Payback Foundation, which put on the opening game every year for 8 teams in our stadium, and all of a sudden high school football bloomed. And today, Indiana produces more Division I players than ever in its history, largely due to Peyton Manning. Amid all the success, there were setbacks. Playoff runs which fell short, his departure from the Colts, which broke his heart, as well as the fans in Indianapolis. But the most critical were the 4 neck surgeries which he faced and which almost ended his career. I sat with Peyton and the doctors when they informed him that he would need a 4th surgery, a spinal fusion. They couldn't guarantee success, but they could guarantee a torturous 9-month rehab if he were to ever play again. I offered to him that if this were the end, he should have no regrets. He'd given the game all he had. He pondered the situation, which seemed for a long while like a long time. And then he looked at us with that steely, determined look that we'd come to know so well and said, "I will be back." And he was as good as his word. He did, and began a new and glorious chapter with the Denver Broncos. Unfortunately, it didn't end too well for Charlotte, but it ended great for him. Through it all, he remains the ultimate competitor, honored and revered by opponents and teammates alike. To those like myself, lucky enough to be his teammate, he's a guy that you couldn't respect more. A perfectionist for whom no amount of preparation was ever enough. A loyal and generous, down-to-earth guy who was one of us. The disc jockey on the flights home from winning games, Much of that is not suitable for a family audience, but it's funny as could be. And a practical joker who never met one he wouldn't pull. One day in camp, I woke up and found that my golf cart was gone. Our camp at Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology was a very, very hilly area, and I had to go up 6 flights of stairs to get to the camp office. I walked in to report my car missing, and I looked out on a lake, and it was sitting there. There's a little lake in the middle of the campus. It was sitting on top of top of a float. I knew instantly who the culprit was. That afternoon during stretching, I walked down and I said, guess what? Some jackass stole my golf cart and put it in the lake. And he looked up at me with that deadpan Saturday Night Live face and said, gee, that's too bad. If I were you, I'd get after that guy. He claimed many more victims over the years, showing us a side of him that the public never saw until he became a television celebrity. And now you see what he's really like. That's him, not the quarterback hollering Omaha. It's the guy playing the practical jokes and being a great teammate and a great person. 25 years ago, he came in the office and wanted to know if we had made our choice. It was very close to the draft. And I said, no, I haven't quite made it yet. And he said, well, I want to know whether or not you're going to pick me, because I'd rather not go to New York if you're not going to make that choice. I said, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. 2 days before the draft, if you give me your word that you won't tell a soul, I'll let you know. So he said, okay, that's fair enough. I don't think he was real happy about it, but he said, that's fair enough. Started to walk out of the office and stopped in the doorway. And he said, let me leave you with this thought. If you take me, I promise we'll win a championship. And if you don't, I promise I'll come back and kick your butt. I didn't know if he meant me or the Colts, but thank God I didn't take a chance. The ultimate leader, the ultimate teammate, the ultimate role model, a guy that all of us revere and look up to. None of us, and Dwight Freeney will be the newest one this coming August, would have these jackets without him. So it is my honor and privilege to introduce to you my teammate and friend, Peyton Manning.
Here he is, Peyton Manning. Peyton, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much.
Showed you, well, first of all, it's an honor to have Bill Polian introduce you. Some great stories right there. I was looking at the total yards you threw for. You threw for more yards than I have miles on my car. And my car is a 2015. So I was like, holy cow. But take us back to 1998, if you don't mind. As Bill Polian just talked about, tonight, first round NFL draft. You, Ryan Leaf, what's going to happen? You're a kid at that moment. Now, you went to college for all 4 years, but to have the nerve to leave him with that thought, how do you have that confidence to say that?
No, first of all, thank you very much for having me, and boy, I really appreciate Bill Polian introducing me. Very, very special to go down memory lane with Bill, and it's hard to believe 26 years ago that I was drafted. And look, I'll say this, it was a tremendous honor to be the #1 pick in the NFL draft. But let me tell you, you were going to a team that has earned the #1 pick in the NFL draft. There's a reason they have that pick. And Bill Polian obviously had just come from rebuilding the Carolina Panthers. And prior to that, he rebuilt the Buffalo Bills. And so I was actually very excited about potentially being drafted by the Colts because of Bill Polian and his track record for getting franchises going in the right direction. So it was an exciting time. I was in New York. It's changed a lot. I think tonight there'll be probably 20 players there in New York for the draft, and it's just a little bit of reality TV. Unfortunately, I always kind of enjoyed, they sort of film that player that's not getting drafted, and his girlfriend kind of scoots further and further away each pick. He digresses in the draft, but it was an exciting time. You know, I got drafted in New York, and our owner, Jim Irsay, was there. He flew me to Indianapolis. The Colts gave me the playbook, and I was back in Indianapolis 3 days later. They had already named me the starting quarterback, and it was really kind of my first real job, and that's when my NFL career began. So it's been fun to go down memory lane.
So you get drafted number 1, the first year with the Colts. You set some rookie passing records, but you also took a beating. What did you learn most from that first year?
Yeah, my first year was tough. We only won 3 games that year, lost 13. I lost more games in my rookie year than I had in my entire high school and college career combined. And I did set an NFL rookie record for interceptions, which is a record that I still hold today, ladies and gentlemen. It's actually very hard to do. You have to throw 3 interceptions in your first game, 4 in your second game, 3 in your third game. If you get 10 early, boy, you really have a chance to get on a roll and break it. There's potentially 6 quarterbacks that might be taken in the first round tonight, and I'm pulling for all of them to succeed, but I would love for one of them to break that record and get that one off my resume. But look, you know, when you're a first pick of the draft, you're coming in with a lot of hoopla, and now, you know, different from college, you have 37, 38-year-old grown adults kind of looking at you in the huddle to see how you're handling this adversity. And Bill was just a rock for me from a support system that, hey, just keep hanging in there, keep fighting the good fight. I mean, he knew it wasn't going to be easy, but all of the interceptions and the losses was certainly disappointing. But I'll say this, Bill, he kind of recommended to the coaches that I stayed in every single game. They never took me out of a game, and we went from 3-13 my rookie year to 13-3 the next year. And I think because I learned to sort of face that adversity and learn just how fast these defensive players are, and that it's okay to throw the ball away every now and then. And so 28 interceptions can humble you, but I think it made me a better player. And really since 1999, after that, the Colts were kind of off and running.
Yeah, well, that's obviously a testament to you, a testament to Bill Polian for making sure you stayed in that starting position, because today people don't have that type of patience.
Well, yeah, that's the problem. With, you know, like I said, Mahomes is breaking all of my records, don't get me wrong, but you think with 17 games, this interception record would get broken. But the problem is when these quarterbacks struggle now, the coaches take him out. I'm like, no, leave him in there. Let him learn. And anyway, I'm over it.
You played that practical joke with the golf cart. At what point did you feel like you could finally be yourself as the young quarterback and the leader of that team?
Yeah, that's a great question. I learned a valuable lesson in leadership when I was in college. My very first game in college, I was playing for Tennessee. We were playing against UCLA up in the Rose Bowl. I was kind of third team on the depth chart, not expecting to play at all in this game, just kind of happy to be in the stadium. And, boy, a lot of things happened fast. On the 7th play of the game, our starting quarterback tore his knee. He is out for the year. Our backup quarterback, for any baseball fans in here, was a guy named Todd Helton. He's going into the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown this summer. Todd was kind of thinking about baseball. I don't think he knew a lot of the plays. They put him in there for a little while. They took him out. Anyway, coach says, Peyton, you're going in the game. And I was so nervous, and I'm jogging into that huddle, and we're getting beat, and our team's kind of in a bad mood. We've lost our starting quarterback. And I remember something that my dad had told me. He said, son, if you ever get into that huddle with the starters at any point in the season, you've got to be the leader and take control of that huddle. That's your job as a quarterback. It doesn't matter, you're just a freshman. Be the leader and take control. So I get into that huddle. I remember my dad's advice. I said, all right, guys, I know I'm just a freshman, but I could take us down the field right now, get us a touchdown, get us back in this game. Let's go. Big left tackle, about, 6'5", 330 pounds, grabs me by the shoulder and says, "Hey, freshman, shut the blank up and call the blank and play." And I said, "Yes, sir." And really good advice from my dad. It was a humbling moment, but it just taught me such a valuable lesson that it goes for any sports business that, just because you're the quarterback doesn't make you a leader automatically. You have to kind of earn that mantle of leadership. And I had not earned the respect of these new teammates or coworkers of mine. And so I didn't say another word in that huddle the rest of the season. But I tried to be the first one out there to practice, last to leave, always kind of had my nose in my playbook, took responsibility for my play in the team meetings, in my interviews. And I think slowly toward the end of that year, I kind of had more of a vocal platform to maybe be myself and to be a leader. And I really applied that when I got to Indianapolis. I kind of called it silent leadership. Just wanted to let my new teammates know, hey, I am here to help the Colts start winning games again. I just didn't say a whole lot. And then once you go through some adversity and maybe have a game-winning touchdown pass, maybe you have a little more of a platform to be more of a vocal leader. And even when I got to Denver, I kind of took that same philosophy. I didn't go to Denver barking orders by any means. I went in there, I wanted to earn their respect before you become a vocal leader.
So who was the first victim of a practical joke?
Was
it the rookie year or the second
obviously,
year?
when you do a prank to your general manager, you better have pretty good job security. So that was later in my career. I never would have thought about doing that as a rookie by any means. But look, when you grow up with two brothers, I'm a middle child. You better learn to have thick skin, and then being in the NFL locker room, you better learn to laugh, to kind of laugh at yourself. And I think, look, I apologize. I do way too many commercials. I admit it. But for a football player to take their helmet off and show that they can laugh at themselves, they don't take themselves too seriously. When you watch a football game and you see a player laughing or smiling, you think he's not focused, and people kind of criticize him. But I've always enjoyed laughing, and that's what I miss the most about playing is the camaraderie with my teammates. Bill mentioned, the playing music on the airplanes after wins. I think what I miss the most about my football career are the plane rides after a win. There's nothing like being on a plane with 53 of your friends after this hard-fought victory. The adrenaline, the emotion is nothing quite like it, and I really do miss that. I tell people all the time, the next time you're on that commercial flight and that flight attendant says, "This plane cannot take off," so everyone is seated and your cell phones are turned off, that is not true. Because after an NFL game, everybody's standing up, they're on their phones, they're high-fiving and hugging, and that plane takes off just fine. So I miss the plane rides.
You bring up so many points that I want to talk about. One, your acting. Unbelievable, okay? I mean, you should win an Academy Award for what you do. One of my favorite commercials of all time is when you're in the restaurant chanting for the staff, and at the end you're waiting at the exit. You're like, oh, and the guy throws you the apron. You're like, oh my God, yes. How many takes? Is that just you just being yourself?
Yeah, like I said, I've enjoyed doing them. It's a chance to kind of show you have, a little bit of personality. And I feel like for the most part, the commercials that I've done, I am not an actor by any means, but for the most part, they've kind of let me say the line the way I would say it, right? Mm-hmm. To say y'all or something that makes me feel a little more comfortable. But I've enjoyed doing them. Look, I knew these commercials were kind of taking a life of its own when people were sort of speaking commercial lines to me in kind of everyday life or even in football team meetings. I do this one particular insurance commercial. That jingle kind of gets in your head and it just won't leave. And I go to dinner oftentimes with my family and the waitress will come up, "What would you like to eat?" And I'm like, let's not do that. Let's just talk like real human beings for a minute. I'll have the chicken. But I mentioned it kind of came into football. Football is an interesting profession. Wesley Walls can tell you, any football player can tell you, you film every game, you watch the film of the game the next day, you also film every practice. and you watch the film of the practice the next day. So every day you are being graded and evaluated. And if you make a mistake, you have to answer for it the next day in the meeting. So this is my last year in Denver, and we're watching the film of a practice from the day before, and I'd thrown an interception in the double coverage. And the coach says, Peyton, this is a greedy decision. The running back is wide open. You're forcing the ball downfield. You've got to make better decisions in this. And I love being coached. And I said, yes, sir, I got it. I'm writing my notes down. And sitting right behind me was one of my receivers, Emmanuel Sanders, and he leans in my ear and he says, number 18 screwed it up. Now, he might have used a different word, but so, yeah, I've enjoyed doing them. And, look, football has allowed me to do these commercials or to host some of the, I got the chance to be on Saturday Night Live years ago. It's because of football that's allowed me to do it, but I really have enjoyed doing some of those things because you kind of go behind the ropes in someone else's field. And, people ask me about hosting Saturday Night Live. We did this one particular skit where I was throwing these footballs at these kids. And people don't believe me, but the footballs, they were Nerf footballs. The Nerf was cut out, as light as a feather, but you put those sound effects with it, it looks like you were just knocking these kids out. And the director's like, Peyton, you're a charitable guy. The theme of the skit was United Way. Spend time with your kids so Peyton Manning doesn't. And he says, you're a charitable guy. That's why it's going to work, but it's only going to be effective if you are all in, if you whack these kids right in the face. And I kept saying my mother's going to be so disappointed when she sees this. Anyway, we get up to it, and I just say, this just feels slightly over the edge. I'm not comfortable. The kids' parents were out there the entire time watching the entire. I just said, I'm really uncomfortable. And the director was great. It was the guy that wrote it was Andy Samberg, the actor. He said, no problem. We'll find something else. We'll change it. And then right then, I cannot make this up, one of the parents of the kids runs out onto the set and tells the director, I want him to hit my kid in the face. And I said, I will do it. I will knock your kid out.
Oh, that's awesome. So, okay. Yes, football allowed you that opportunity, but also the person that you are allowed these opportunities to come up. And I think about, you mentioned you and your brothers and the job that your parents did, raising the three of you, your dad, an NFL quarterback. Kudos to your parents, because I've had the opportunity to meet your brothers, and just like you, they're awesome people. What was it about your parents' parenting that allowed you guys all to be humble yet successful?
Well, thank you very much for that. Yeah, I feel like I really had a pretty normal childhood. I think people have this perception that my parents and my dad especially was on this mission to raise quarterbacks. And I really think they were just trying to raise children. And I think because there wasn't some master plan by any means, maybe that's why it ended up working out. My parents encouraged us to play sports because of the valuable lessons that sports teaches. Taking coaching, overcoming adversity, working with different types of teammates. But they never pushed us or pressured us into playing. I think that's the right approach, right? My dad's rule was if we wanted him to help us, we had to go to him and say, Dad, we're going to throw over at the schoolyard. Will you come over and help us? And he was glad to help, but it was never him coming to us saying, hey, we're going to work out right now. So it was a healthy approach. I was a middle child. Cooper is 2 years older than me. Eli's 5 years younger than me. Cooper taught me a lot, beat up on me a little bit. I felt I needed to do those same things down to Eli. We were big kids. Cooper was 12 pounds, 3 ounces at birth. I was 12 pounds, 1 ounce. Eli was only 10. We thought something was wrong with him. But
God bless your mom.
My parents, that's right. My parents always said, if you ever want to disappoint us as parents, don't get along with your brothers. That'd be one way to kind of let us down. So we've always remembered that. Not saying we didn't fight or argue like lots of siblings do, but we always made up and had each other's backs and still do today. So Cooper was a wide receiver with me in high school, probably one of the most enjoyable years I had playing football. I was a sophomore, he was a senior. I completed 120 passes that year. I threw 90 of them to my brother. And he went to Ole Miss on scholarship, had a neck injury, had to give up his career. The grace and attitude with which he handled that adversity just had a huge impact on me when I went through my injuries. Look, he was disappointed. but he just had an incredible faith and positive attitude about it, and wrote me a letter, kind of said, I want to live my dream of playing football through you. So I never took playing football, being healthy for a game or a practice for granted, and always remembered that. And look, he's been very successful in business, raised a great family, became a social legend at Ole Miss, if that makes sense to anybody in here. So he definitely made his mark. And then Eli, being 5 years younger, we never played on the same team. Eli was always getting dragged to my games from my parents, but Eli and I really grew closer when he started playing quarterback in high school. I was at Tennessee, I'd come back and we'd work out together, and then he was at Ole Miss and I was playing for the Colts, and it really kind of grew closer during that time. And it was just nice for so many years having a brother in the same business, right? Mm-hmm. We could share ideas. We'd share game plan notes. We'd work out together in the offseason. You just couldn't do that with any other NFL quarterback. And just been proud of him, the way he's handled himself in the community in New York, and very philanthropic back to the state of Mississippi, and played against him 3 times. And I got to tell you, he and I really didn't enjoy that much, because you pull so hard for your brother. You still want to win for your team, but you want the best for your brother. Really tough on my parents. They were pulling for Eli. I know that.
Well, he's the baby.
But I think about the Kelsey family playing against each other in the Super Bowl last year. I've been on both sides of that game. That is not something you'd wish on anybody, to have one win and one lose. It's just a situation you don't want. So ours were just all 3 games in the regular season. I will say, for all 3 games, just coincidentally, we were lined up right across from each other singing the national anthem. And you kind of take a moment and go, now this is kind of neat. That's my little brother. We're playing in front of 80,000 people here in New York. So proud of him. And, now we work together. We did win all 3 times in those games. But I've been very blessed to have great support system. Last thing I'll say about my dad. My dad was very present in our lives. I know he said no to some things when he retired from football that would have taken him away from being a part of his kids' lives. My dad was at our Little League baseball games. He was at our youth basketball games. I could see him in the stands, and that was important to me. And like I said, I'm busy, I'm stimulated, but I will be at my son's baseball game this weekend. I was with my daughter at a volleyball tournament last weekend in Philadelphia. So I've taken my dad's kind of approach to being present in our lives, and he was always telling us he was proud of us, telling us that he loved us. He lost his father when he was in college, had a big impact on his parenting philosophy. So that's had a big impact on me. Ashley and I have 13-year-old boy-girl twins. There was a good documentary on my dad several years ago kind of telling that story. It was really well done. I personally think it showed a few too many crying videos of me as a 3-year-old. At what point do you think you'd stop filming your 3-year-old son getting kicked in the head by his older brother and maybe go out there and help the kid? I don't know. No, I got to keep filming. This might be a documentary one day. So, besides that, he's been a great dad.
Okay, so a couple quick questions. You mentioned you were 3-0 against Eli. How important was it for you to get that second ring to shut him up?
Yeah. I mean, Eli and I we've never been that way. We don't trash talk to each other. We always just kind of had each other's backs and pull for each other. And like I said, being 5 years younger than me, we never really competed against each other growing up. Cooper and I, played a lot of one-on-one basketball in the backyard. So look, I was as proud of Eli's Super Bowls as the ones that I won, because that's my little brother over there. I know how hard it is. So we pulled hard for each other. We work together now, which is a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. We get to we host this football show. I do it from my neighbor's garage in Denver. Eli does it from his back house in New Jersey. We get to watch football. I mean, Eli, when we met with ESPN, Eli went, wait a minute, let me get this straight. You want to pay me to watch football with my brother from my house? He's like, I know I went to Ole Miss. I'm smart enough to know that's a pretty good deal. And so we work together. We watch football. We have guests on that. The number one criteria for these guests is they have to love football also. Yep. And I think football is a great unifier. I think football can bring people together. And we've had President Obama on, who loves the Chicago Bears. Condoleezza Rice can break down a cover 2 defense as well as I can. Snoop Dogg has been a youth football coach for years in Los Angeles. Has had a huge impact on a number of young men. And you just sort of check all your backgrounds and politics at the gate when you come on this show, and we can just watch a game together. So, like I said, I love talking to people who like football as much as I do. Now, these guests are on via Zoom, so we can see them in between commercial breaks. There's a little more smoke coming out of Snoop's Zoom than there is Condoleezza's, but that's okay. We all love football. We're all on the same page.
All right, before we wrap things up, there are a couple of things, and obviously Peyton's a very busy guy, and we appreciate him coming here today, and I think all of us truly love this. We could talk for hours, I know that. You were just known to watch film, so now with Omaha Productions, with the Manning cast, when you're watching a game, what are you looking for? What's the tell that you specifically are looking at when you're watching film or seeing something in a game that, okay, I got it?
Well, when I was a player, I felt like preparation was where I was trying to get an edge, right? Like we're all trying to get an edge somehow on our competition, and I couldn't out-throw anybody, right? I know that there's been a number of quarterbacks y'all have had here before, Brett Favre, and I mean, these guys had bigger arms than I did, so I couldn't out-throw anybody. As Bill Pullen and our old offensive line coach in Indianapolis used to tell me, Peyton, you couldn't run out of sight in a week. I couldn't outrun anybody either. It was a very nice thing to say, but I thought I could out-prepare them. And so that's what kind of gave me confidence when I was playing. So I watched a ton of film to try to figure out kind of what the defense was doing before the ball was snapped. And so I would kind of pause the film when I was watching it and say, okay, here's what I think is going to happen. And then you play it. Sometimes you were wrong, sometimes you were right. But when I would get under center on Sunday afternoons, I could see the defense, and I'd say, I've seen this defense before. I was watching this Wednesday night on my couch, and I think I have a pretty good idea of what's going to happen. And that just gave me confidence on Sunday afternoons.
All right, rapid fire. Who is that guy across the line that you had the most fun?
Well, I don't know, the most fun. I mean, the most intimidating guy and the guy that hit me the hardest and the most often was Ray Lewis for the Ravens. Smart, fast, strong, instinctive. Always kind of knew our plays. I felt like every time he'd hit me, he'd kind of drive me into the ground and kind of use me to help him get up and whisper in my ear, I'll be back here in a couple of minutes, punk. Very friendly guy. When he retired, it was one of the greater days of my life.
I feel badly you mentioned your neck injury. And before we wrap things up, I'd be remiss not to ask you about it. The rehab that Mr. Polian spoke about, the doubt, what you went through to relearn, how difficult was that?
Yeah, it was strange. I had neck problems that required several surgeries, and of all things, it kind of caused nerve damage in my right arm and right hand, and wasn't allowed to do anything. I remember Bill and I used to walk on the football field during practice. That was kind of my rehab. I was allowed to walk, but I kind of had to learn to play in a new physical state. My grip strength in my right arm. I had a high school coach used to always tell me, Peyton, you ought to learn to be amphibious. You ought to learn to throw left-handed. I think he meant ambidextrous. I never asked him, but it was too late to become amphibious at that point. But I kind of had to learn to play in a new physical state. I couldn't throw, to use a baseball analogy, the 100-mile-an-hour fastball, but I could still work the outside edges of the plate, and you can still strike somebody out that way. So, Bill talked to me a lot about that, about just say, be accurate on these intermediate throws and use your experience, and you can still, as Hank Stram once said, you can still matriculate your team down the field. And so I got to play 4 more years, got to be part of another championship team. So in a strange way, I'm almost glad I went through that injury and adversity, because I learned that I could adjust and adapt, and also could kind of persevere through a pretty tough adversity.
All right, how's that right arm feeling right now?
Not great. I coach youth football, but I got a range of about 10 to 15 yards.
All right, so that should work. We've got a sold-out place right here. We've got 3 footballs over here. If I ask trivia questions and someone raises their hand and answers the question correctly, can you throw it to them?
Yeah, I just hope nobody in the back wins it.
Just watch out for the chandeliers. Okay, so I came up with some questions. First one. Actually, let's get one of those footballs. By the way, if you get the question, if I call on you and you get the question wrong, you don't get the pass. Okay? So the first question is, who was the head coach for Peyton Manning's rookie year? That is correct. All right. Okay, so he's over there, so wait a minute. You're in the huddle. You're in the huddle. Yeah. Yes, complete. All right, this is a two-parter. How many Super Bowls did Peyton play in, and how many coaches did he have in those Super Bowls? Well, I got a call on someone. All right, right here. Stand on up. This, yeah. All right. The last football. Before you throw it, I'm going to make you do one thing if it's okay. The question is, we all know Peyton Manning played the majority of his career with Indianapolis. Who was the receiver that caught his first pass with the Denver Broncos? That is correct. Okay, now, so it's this guy. Stand up, please. All right, now if you can, Peyton, pretend we're in the huddle.
Omaha.
Well done. Hey, Peyton. Thank you. You guys, I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. Peyton, thank you so much for doing this. I know you're busy tonight being the first round of the NFL draft. We truly appreciate you coming. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Thank you.